All right, we're on. Qualification and certification of locomotive engineers. We're on Appendix E. Appendix E to Part 240 of the recommended procedure for the conducting skill performance. Federal Railroad requires that 240-127, 242-11, the locomotive engineers can be given a skill performance test prior to the recertification established by certain criteria of the conduct of the test. The railroads are given discretion concerning the manner in which the administrative required testing. Federal Railroad has also afforded the railroads discretion, allowing individual railroad companies latitude to tailor the testing procedures of the specific operational realities. The appendix contains the Federal Railroad recommendations of the administration of the skill performance testing that occurs during the operation of the actual training and the modified serves in the instance whether the locomotive simulator employed with the testing purposes the recommended practices followed will ensure more than systematic assessment of locomotive engineering performance. The need for systematic approach, the numbers of criteria that should be monitored, designated supervisor, locomotive engineers, observing the person, determining whether the individual should be satisfied, recertified as qualified locomotive. The details of the critical will verify the different classes of the service type of the railroad, determine terrain of the trails, with the terrain of the train. With which the train is operated, minimum intention designated supervisor locomotive engineers should be concentrate in several general areas during the appraisal. Compliance with the railroad operating rules, including the safety directive, training, handling rules. Compliance federal regulations should be carefully monitored, but in order to effectively evaluation of the employees, it's necessary to have some of the thing against the compare with the performance and other. In order to hold the locomotive engineer accountable for the compliance, the railroad must have the adequate operation, safety, and handling operations. Any railroad that fails to have adequate operating, safety, and training handling rules will experience difficult establishing objective method of measuring individual skills. Any railroad that requires evaluation of individual performance relative to the train handling performance handling rules needed to establish a preferred operating range for the throttle, use of the brake application, train speed. The absence of such criteria results into the lack of meaningful yardstick of designated supervisor locomotive engineer to use the measuring performance of the locomotive engineer is essential to have the defensive standard. Is essential to have the definite standard of the engineer. Any review of the body can now be certified candidate before being measured against. Evaluating performance of certain train operating skills will tend to occur to the all situation. For example, if it would be rare for a designated supervisor locomotive engineer to observe in any operating for a reason and in period of time, not having some of the opportunity to review engineer compliance with some basic safety rules and compliance with the basic operating of the rules, performance brake test, complexity of the operation, increasing the number of the items operating must comply with the higher speed mountainous terrain and in various signal systems, place increased emphasis needed the operating compliance with more safety operating, training, handling rules, accounting for such variables and universal monitoring schemes immediately result in fairly complex systems. The Federal Railroad Administration therefore recommends designated supervisor locomotive engineers employed with a written aid and help in the events of the procedure. Minimum should be observed when conducting skills performance tests. The Federal Railroad Administration is providing the following information to assist the railroads developing is written is to ensure the meaningful test in which in conducting skills performance test is designated supervisor locomotive engineer should be alert to the following. Does the employee have the necessary books, operating rules and safety rules and timetables? Are the procedures and inspections promptly conducted? Railroad air brake tests and locomotive does the employee comply with the application safety rules? Does the employee read the bulletins, general orders? En route, does the employee does the employee comply with the applicable federal rules? Monitor gauges. Properly use horn, whistle, and headlight. Couple the cars at safe speed. Properly control the train and slack and buff forces. Properly use train braking system. Comply with speed restrictions. Display familiarity with the physical characteristics. Comply with signal indication. Respond properly to unusual conditions. At conclusion of the trip, does the employee Apply a handbrake of to the locomotives. Properly report the locomotive defects. Obviously, the less sophisticated the railroad operations are, fewer in the number of the identifying practices that would be relevant. Hence, this should be modified accordingly. The need for objective using observation essential for the railroad conducting performance skill testing for the most objective. Essential for the railroad conducting the performance testing for the most objective manner possible, whether the testing of the locomotive engineer, initial qualification testing, periodic testing. There will also be a potential for the subject views to held designated supervisor of locomotive engineers conducting the test to enter the evaluation concerning the competency, particular individual handling of the position. Locomotive engineering steps can be taken and the need to be taken, minimizing risk and personality factors adversely influencing testing procedures. One of the way to reduce entry to the subject matters of qualification procedures through the use of the documentation specific criteria of designated supervisors, locomotive engineers to place emphasis for the use of observation will reduce to not eliminate subjective. Any of the skills and tests will contain an amount of the subjectivity that will comply with the operating rules and safety rules. In the clearance in most cases, the opportunities for deviation for the train handling for other maze operation for the few obsolete right answers. Absolute right answers. The fact that the engineer applies to the train air brakes at one location rather than a few yards away does not necessarily indicate the failure, but a question of judgment. The use of dynamic braking versus air brakes as a particular location may be questioned as a judgment unless the carrier has previously specified a preferred braking method. Any case of the engineering's judgment to imply not applying a braking system as given in an application is subject to the option designated supervisor, locomotive engineer. A railroad should subject to reduce the eliminating subjective through the use of some type of the observation evaluation railroad developing evaluation form use of the concern and identifying earlier the relevant issuances of the railroad that does not sophisticated operations that only need short lists of subject. For example, no smaller railroads would not require the line items for pertain in compliance with single rule compliance with the use of dynamic brakes. Conversely, all instances observation form shall include the time, location, observable, started, ended the observation. Federal Railroad Administration believes that the minimum duration of all performance skills in Federal Railroad Administration allows the railroad to select duration appropriate the individual circumstances are requiring for the period of sufficient and exercising in its discretion. Federal Railroad suggests that the minimum selected railroad be stated in terms of distances since the examination has to be sufficient duration of adequate monitoring of the operating skills of the variety of situation. The Federal Railroad Administration suggests that the format, the observation, including a space for recording the observing commitments and previous comments, ideally would allow the inclusion of construction criticism with altering import. The evaluation would import and permit subjective comments murdered. Railroad user fees. Part 245, and that is not it, brothers. So there's your qualification, certification, records of Federal Railroad and programs. So peace.